Hi, my name is Marc Charbonneau, and I'm a strategic marketing and sales training consultant. This series of videos is around how to better understand, connect, and communicate with your customers. If you can do that, the right patients get treated with the right medications, and you make a positive difference in their lives. I've been in the pharma industry for over 20 years. I've been a sales rep, a brand manager, a sales manager. I have a lot of real-world experience. I know what works on the ground and what doesn't. The objective of these videos is to use that real-world experience to give you practical tips and suggestions around how to take your relationship with your customer to the next level. Now, in my last video, I talked about an aha moment that I had in the field around the fact that we often think we understand and know what's important to our customers, but sometimes we just don't go deep enough. Knowing that for a customer, efficacy, safety, or tolerability is important to them is a lot like a car salesperson knowing that the person in their showroom is looking for a vehicle to get them from A to B. It's just not enough. Efficacy is a great example. Even for the same product, two different customers can view efficacy completely differently. For one, it can be speed of action. For another, it can be low relapse rates. And unless we're talking to those customers about what's important to them and give them examples that resonate with them, the odds are we're wasting their time and our own. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about better understanding your customer through understanding their conscious and unconscious decision criteria. Now, decision criteria can be properties relating to your product, either real or imagined, that decide whether or not your customer uses them or not. Conscious decision criteria can be something like, let's say, once daily therapy. Your customers decided that they prefer medications that are taken once daily versus multiple times a day because they believe that it enhances patient compliance. Unconscious decision criteria are things that drive what the customer does that they're not aware of. Embarrassment's a good example. You can have a customer that has a hard time talking to their patients about their sexual health. So that could cause them to avoid raising the subject during appointments or avoid prescribing medications that would force them to have those conversations. The customer may deny or rationalize what they're doing, but it doesn't change the fact that it's happening. Now, I'm going to be upfront with you. My ability to help you with conscious decision criteria is going to be limited. You've probably been trained on this dozens of times. I've got one trick that helps you take it up a notch. Rather than that, I'm going to keep this section short. Unconscious decision criteria, though, are a game changer. Very few people even know that they exist, and even fewer know how to identify them in their customers. There's virtually no training in this area because it's hard to do. How do you train someone to talk to their customer about something the customer is not even aware of? Here I can help you. It's a YouTube video, so it's pretty condensed, but what I'll do is give you some great top lines around how to recognize unconscious decision criteria with your customers. And again, this is a game changer. If you can apply these principles, if you can recognize unconscious decision criteria in your customers, it puts you way ahead of the competition. All right, so how do you go deeper than just efficacy, safety, and tolerability to really understand why a customer is doing what they do in your therapeutic area? Let's start with conscious decision criteria. Now, as I said before, conscious decision criteria, you've probably had a lot of courses on it, but it's really all about the questioning. And my nuance, the one that really makes a difference, and I would argue, I think it really changes the quality of the information you get, is around the fact that it's really important to focus on the patient reality. So customers, and I don't know why, but often when we get our training for products from our organizations, we learn a lot of technical jargon and terms. But the customers, when they're facing patients, they're looking at how the patient looks, what the patient's saying, how the patient feels. Their experience is really patient-based. So when we ask them questions about the treatments, they've got to be focused around the patient. How did the patient feel? How did the patient look? What did the patient say? Now I know, I've been a sales rep, these type of questions don't work with every customer. They don't work in all therapeutic areas. But generally, with most customers in most therapeutic areas, they're very effective. And I would argue that if we can paint the reality of the customer in the questions that we ask them, the customer is going to be much better able to reflect back their reality and the answers that they give us, so we get better information. I just can't emphasize that enough. Conscious decision criteria, getting conscious decision criteria through questioning can be very effective. And if you have that information, your presentations to your customer will be much better because you're talking to your customer about what's important to them. I'm going to say something that's controversial. While understanding conscious decision criteria is important, I would argue that sometimes it's even more important to understand the customer's unconscious decision criteria. Let me give you an example. When I was a sales rep with Pfizer, we launched Viagra. Now, I don't know if you saw the movie Love and Other Drugs, but my experience was nothing like that. No cool parties, no big money. But that said, it was a great product to launch, and we had some really good conversations with our customers. We would really emphasize the point that it's important for the customers to talk to their patients about their sexual health. The customers virtually all agreed that it was important. They virtually all said that they would do that. The reality was very few of them actually did. And that happened because they were embarrassed, just like anyone else would be, about talking to people about their sexual health. It applies in other areas as well. I'm sure we've all talked to that or all visited that really busy physician, has the crazy practice. They've got a waiting room stacked up with patients. Sometimes, and they won't even admit it to themselves, but sometimes they'll choose a medication that's simple and fast to prescribe over other factors just so they can get to the next patient in their waiting room faster. Fear is another unconscious decision criteria. Sometimes, no matter how good the science, a healthcare professional would rather not treat a patient than take the risk, no matter how infinitely small of a severe side effect. The anticoagulation field is an example of this. So, how do you determine a decision criteria that your customer doesn't even know that they have? The key is to listen to their stories. Stories are a very ancient and powerful way that we share information, and they often contain an emotional component. If your customer remembers a story about a patient, the odds are that's impacted how they perceive the therapeutic area. When I worked with my reps in the field, sometimes my favorite questions to suggest for them to use with their customers were questions like, what was your best or worst experience treating a patient in this therapeutic area? Or, do you have friends or family members who've experienced this? Or, when you're using these medications, what keeps you up at night? What you really want to do is get to the experiences that have had an impact on the customer. These type of questions will do that. Similarly, it's really worth asking the customer if they've heard a story about a patient in this particular therapeutic area. Sometimes just one story shared by a friend or a colleague can affect the way that a customer treats patients. Watching behavior is also very important and very useful. If your customer is very agitated about time, that can tell you something. If there's someone who's very risk adverse, that'll tell you something else. Looking at what they actually do, very important if you can get that information. We're not in the office when a physician prescribes, but sometimes talking to local pharmacists or colleagues, you can get some great information. Some areas even have prescribing data available. However, if you have a customer and they're telling you that one aspect of tolerability is really important to them, but on the other hand, they're prescribing a medication that's very high in that particular side effect, that's telling you that there's an unconscious decision criteria in play. It's really worth it if you can do it to sit down, look at your customer, look at the products that they're using, and think through what does that imply in terms of their perception of the therapeutic area. It's a great exercise. Ultimately, I would argue that if a customer is telling you one thing but they're behaving differently, you need to adapt your presentations to how they're behaving. Our actions speak louder than words. In summary, if you really want to better understand your customers and know what's important to them, listen to their stories, watch how they behave, and when you ask questions, make sure the questions are centered around their day-to-day reality. It's only when we understand our customers that we can really help them. In my next video, I'll be talking about how to better understand, connect, and communicate with your customers by speaking their language and using the power of patient stories. I'd love to hear what you think about the video, so please feel free to thumbs up, thumbs down, write a comment, or contact me directly at marc@solutionsmrc.com. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch the video. Have an amazing day.